understood. So that's what we're going to talk about. Just to give you some introduction, we're going to talk about the mechanism of hormones, how they work. So you can apply, what I really love about this is you can apply the concept to any hormone rather than estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, just this. They all have same principles. So I'll introduce the concepts. You'll understand how they work. Once you understand how they work, then I'm going to introduce where dysfunction lies and what happens and symptoms of the dysfunction. So you can kind of pair it with yourself. And then I'll go so far as introducing the solutions and the strategies. Now, the thing about hormones is everybody has a different hormonal problem, right? Very few people have the same problem. And so I can't give specific strategies for everyone, by no means. That would take an appointment and a consult and lab tests and all that good stuff. But this is just to give an introduction so you can hopefully understand these things. So I guess to start off, giving you a little bit of background about myself. I'm not an endocrinologist, but we're going to talk a lot about hormones today. That's going to be the foundation of today. I'm not a cardiologist or a medical doctor. My background is in natural medicine. My doctorate is in chiropractic. And I don't do chiropractic anymore, but my postgraduate certifications in education are in the multiple fields of functional integrative medicine. And if anybody knows what functional medicine is, or doesn't know, for clarity, functional medicine is a practice, a blend of natural medicine and advanced laboratory testing. So when we have chronic degenerative conditions or chronic disorders, like even hormonal dysfunction, there's probably no better way to approach it than first having a really advanced diagnostics and knowing where the problems lie. And then 90% of hormonal issues are not due to a lack of hormones. This is key. You might want to write notes on this. It's not due to a lack of hormones. 90% of hormonal disorders are due to too much hormone. So pharmaceutical intervention and bioidentical hormone replacement, they do have their place, but 90% of the time, they actually cause more problems than good. You're going to learn about this. So please don't be discouraged. If you are on a bioidentical hormone, there is a place for it, but hopefully this presentation will give you some more insight on if and why and when you would want to do that, and hopefully give you some answers. If your symptoms, if you're listening to this and you have symptoms, you think it's hormonal, it might not even be hormonal. So that's a good thing to rule out stuff. So that's my background, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to share my screen, if I can remember how to do it again. And I put together a little presentation here. So understanding hormones and hormonal dysfunction. If I can fix this here. So the big thing is how I really want to start this, because it's such a big topic. I want to touch on the types of hormones. There's many different types of hormones, but we're going to break it down and keep it simple. There's fat-burning hormones. Okay, we all like these. These are things like, they're also coined anti-aging hormones, but they shouldn't, because it's a lot more than just anti-aging. But that's what people will hear. Growth hormone is one. Insulin-like growth factor is another. Glucagon, adrenaline, thyroid hormones, and testosterone. These are all fat-burning hormones, also known as anti-aging. Then you get the fat-storing hormones, and things like insulin, estrogen, cortisol. Okay, we're going to focus a lot on fat-storing hormones because they create most of the dysfunction. It's never usually a lack of anti-aging hormones. It's an excess of fat-storing hormones. Okay. But when we talk about hormones, there's a common misconception that, hormonal dysfunction only happens in females. No, I see more and more men having problems with hormones than we ever did. And I'll get more into that. But when hormones become imbalanced, a few things happen. Some of the symptoms, you'll see fatigue and exhaustion. A lot of times you'll see this with low thyroid, high cortisol, high insulin, many different hormones, high estrogen. Another thing you'll see is hair loss and thinning. Now, this is more of a metabolic hormone. This is where we would see a lot of thyroid. In fact, this case is thyroid. Bowel difficulty. Now, please bear with me. These symptoms are not only hormonal. They can overlap with many other dysfunctions, but bowel difficulty, you'll see more constipation with low thyroid and more diarrhea with hyperactive thyroid, like hyperthyroidism. Depression. So many hormones play into depression. Depression usually is a symptom of another thing, but if hormones get thrown out too much, estrogen specifically and testosterone, you will see depression. Okay, chronic pain. Chronic pain is one of those symptoms that can come from anywhere. But I have seen chronic pain elevated with high estrogen, because estrogen is inflammatory. There's another thing to make a note of. Estrogen is inflammatory and testosterone is anti-inflammatory. A lot of our hormonal problems, you're going to hear me say this a lot tonight, a lot of our hormone problems, men and women, are high estrogen. Okay. Estrogen, sometimes you'll see this with hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. Another symptom is mood swings. So many things can cause that. Estrogen, progesterone imbalances can do this. These are just some symptoms I'm going through at the start of our talk, so you have an understanding. Being nervous and emotional, a lot of anxiety with high overactive thyroid, overactive cortisol. But being nervous and anxious and emotional can cause high cortisol. And it actually can even increase our estrogen. So they work hand in hand. Behaviors will change hormones, and hormones will change behaviors and what we feel. Cold hands and cold feet. This is never usually a sex hormone that does this. It's usually a metabolic hormone like cortisol, adrenal hormones, and thyroid, of course, low thyroid. Insomnia. There's so many things that play into insomnia, and depending on the type of insomnia, someone having a hard time to stay asleep or fall asleep. If someone's having a hard time to fall asleep, we start looking at cortisol hormones and mostly high cortisol, low melatonin. If someone can't stay asleep, it's still cortisol, usually high, and low melatonin. Thyroid plays into it as well. Thyroid problems can play into this as well. Weight gain, so many things for weight. Weight is always a symptom, but the body has to be running at a decent metabolism. And if people have if lower metabolism, low estrogen, high cortisol, this will do it. And certain hormones play certain characteristics on where weight is held on the body. And again, weight is always a symptom, but sometimes where we're putting on weight gives us a characteristic of potential hormones that could be problematic. So on the left, estrogen, that's the, buttocks, thighs, that's where estrogen loves to put on weight. And then more that central weight gain, a lot in men, but women as well. That is more adrenal hormones like high cortisol. Cortisol's famous for putting weight on the central part of the body. And thyroid, when it slows, if it's low thyroid, low enough, the whole body will gain weight. It'll be kind of uniform. And this is not necessarily weight, but people will start gaining some central weight, but more of the beer belly type, more in men, and liver dysfunction can do that. So this is kind of a little bit abstract, not necessarily hormone. Okay. But it gives us some understanding, and Eastern medicine looks at a lot of body type. They didn't, old ancient Eastern medicine, they never had the diagnostics that we have now. So they would look at body types to determine dysfunction, and they were very accurate. So how do you balance hormones? Well, hormones tend to be a bit of a tug of war against each other. And it's a balance. That's really what it is. When people say, I feel like my hormones are imbalanced in my clinic, I'm always asking this question, and you should as well. Which hormone is fighting the other hormone? Progesterone always competes with testosterone. They fight against each other. And when people are higher on estrogen, it inhibits progesterone. So one dominates the other. And estrogen, little key point in our talk today, I'm going to talk about this a lot, the demons of estrogen. Estrogen dominates everything, and I'll be explaining why that is. But when there's an imbalance between these two hormones, you'll see a lot of weight issues, infertility, a lot of acne, definitely PMS, and hair thinning. Now, some of these symptoms, of course, overlap in other hormones. But testosterone and estrogen are another set of two hormones that compete with one another. Estrogen usually beats testosterone. because of there's so much of it. It's not that it's a stronger hormone, but it's just there's so much of it. That plays weight, infertility, loss of muscle mass. You need to have enough testosterone to inhibit some of your testosterone or estrogen, loss of sex drive, and loss of bone density. You need to have enough estrogen to maintain bone density. Insulin and glucagon work against each other as well, and when there's an imbalance in them, again, weight, fat storage, sugar cravings, reduced energy. So there's a common theme here when you look at these, like how many of these imbalances amongst these two opposing hormones play into weight and energy. I like the most of them. That's why so many people dealing with hormonal dysfunction, a common symptom in men and women, is weight. So to find the answers, we have to know the mechanism of the problem. And this is where I want to introduce the concepts of hormones so you can apply and learn how they work. I'm going to use thyroid for an example because for some reason it's an easier one to explain, if you will. But the concept applies to everything. So here's a little rule. Bear with me, my highly advanced PowerPoint graphics here. That's sarcasm. So we have a gland and we're using thyroid, but you can replace this gland with any other hormone producing gland. It could be adrenal glands. It could be ovaries. It could be thyroid like we are. It could be testes. It could be any other gland in the body. Okay. But we're picking thyroid, but you could interchange it with any other gland you're concerned of. The thyroid gland produces a hormone. With regards to hormone, thyroid gland makes T3 and T4. This T3 thyroid hormone, including any other hormone, it doesn't travel anywhere it wants to. It needs a transport mechanism. I like to call it a taxi, but that's really what it is. So the thyroid hormone jumps on the taxi, in this case T3, T4, and the taxi transports it to a tissue. Now hormones activate tissues and to make the tissue do something it wants to, or we want to. Many different hormones hit the same tissue. And so it's very dynamic. It's very complicated, but this is to simplify it. So again, imagine the thyroid hormone, T3, T4, jumps on the taxi and goes to the tissue. It doesn't go directly to the tissue. There's a button on the tissue called a receptor, hormone receptor. And there's a hormone receptor on every tissue in every tissue in the body. So the T3, T4 hits the receptor on the thyroid tissue, or in this case, thyroid, or whatever activation tissue. So a tissue could be like mitochondria. Thyroid specifically, one tissue thyroid activates is scalp. So people with low thyroid, they lose hair. So it activates the scalp. The function of the thyroid tissue would be increased hair growth. If it's activating mitochondria, well, mitochondria produces energy in the body, naturally gives us more energy. If the tissue is fat burning glands, naturally it hits the button on the fat burning glands and you lose weight. So the mechanism is the same. The gland makes a hormone. The hormone jumps on a transport mechanism like a taxi. The taxi hauls the hormone to the receptor, which is a button on the tissue, and activates that specific tissue. With regards to thyroid, it actually does all of these. It stimulates the scalp to produce hair. It stimulates mitochondria to give us energy. It stimulates other fat burning glands to help us lose weight. But you could replace, again, this is just a concept. You can replace it with any other gland and its corresponding hormone and corresponding tissue. But this is important to remember, okay? That's how they work. The biggest thing to know is the unknown of hormones. Hormones work in harmony. And the reason why bioidentical hormone replacements don't do a very good job is because we're just strategically adding another hormone in the body. I get many people in my office on a lot of hormones. They can be very helpful, very powerful. But what happens is there's no other solution. So hormone starts to build in the body, one hormone. And this is a problem because this is a symphony. There's a bunch of musicians playing in the symphony. What happens if you just add a whole bunch of, piano players and they start playing, heavy metal, and you're in and it's a Beethoven song? Everything gets thrown off. That one hormone increases, but everything else gets thrown off. So we got to be careful with hormones. They're very, very, very delicate. That's the point I was trying to put across. So healthy hormones. So Now, I'm going to introduce how healthy hormones work, healthy hormone regulation. So it all starts in the brain. The brain stimulates the gland. Again, we're going to use thyroid gland as a theme here, but again, replace that with any other gland, ovaries, testes, adrenal glands, what have you. So the brain stimulates the thyroid produces the hormone T3, T4. That's what happens. And then if the T3, T4 gets low, so your thyroid hormone, your hormone numbers get low, that's okay, because the body's amazing. This low hormone creates a signal. So if low hormone, like T3, T4, this increases brain stimulation. There's a signal that goes back to the brain, and the brain says, oh, wow, it's low. That's okay, I've got that figured out. So what happens? That signal goes on, the brain gets stimulated, and then the brain naturally starts to stimulate the thyroid because it knows it needs to. And naturally, the thyroid produces more hormone to get our thyroid levels back up to speed. This is a concept. You can apply it with any gland, any hormone. It all comes from the brain. The brain's input is a feedback mechanism. This is how hormones regulate themselves. Now, many things can interrupt this regulation. We'll get into some of those so you can understand how hormones, but hormones do balance themselves when things are good, when things are normal. So when you tamper with hormone regulation, this is one mechanism of tampering with hormone regulation. I apologize, my phone has been beeping here a lot. When you tamper with hormone regulation, we'll use the same scenario. We have the thyroid, it produces the hormone, T3, T4, and then you add in medications. Now, I'm not anti-medication at all. Hopefully you guys already understand that. I'm anti-medication for everything, and it doesn't work. And not asking the quite reckless prescriptions, not looking for a solution or why to it, just adding more medications. So you add medications in. This would be like Synthroid, levothyroxine, Armour-thyroid, all of that. Any thyroid hormone medication, hormone replacement therapy, same mechanism. You add the hormone in. Well, naturally, our numbers are going to go up, right? T3, T4 are going to go up. That's good. But what happens is when you add hormone in, there's decreased brain stimulation. You don't need to stimulate, the brain doesn't need to be part of it because the brain's paying attention, and if there's lots of hormone, it doesn't need to do anything. If the brain doesn't need to stimulate the thyroid, well, what happens? If it goes on for a long enough period of time, the gland doesn't get any exercise. And this could be the ovaries, this could be the testes, this could be the adrenal glands, this could be the thyroid. Any hormone you add in the body, the gland that's supposed to make that hormone stops making it. And like the thyroid, it starts to shrink and fade. And then we become dependent on the medication. And there's places for this. But I see this in a few scenarios. This is thyroid, more metabolic hormone. We'll see it all the time where people become permanently dependent on thyroid medication. And hopefully it's working. A lot of times it doesn't work because there's other problems with it. If you have questions about thyroid specifically, I can answer those. Send us an email. I have a presentation just on thyroid function. But this will work with contraceptives. Right? You take a contraceptive, it doesn't matter what form it is. Most of it's estrogen medication. Some people, IUDs and things like that, they'll say it's non-hormone, but it still influences its hormone. That's the only way it works. These women taking a lot of contraceptives, what happens? They're adding a bunch of hormone to their body. Ovaries are supposed to make the hormones. So what happens to the ovaries? They start to shrink. And then long-term contraceptive use will create an environment, a woman, where they can't make their own hormone and they become infertile. Okay. Sometimes it just takes a while to get pregnant and conceive. Sometimes it's permanent. You'll see it in men too. You'll see it in men with bodybuilders. They'll take testosterone or the bioidentical hormone clinic or bodybuilding or wherever they're getting their testosterone from. Their testes quit producing or reduce its production of testosterone. What happens to the testes? They actually shrink and lose their function. And there's a dependency. So it's very dangerous, very powerful hormone medications, but we got to respect them. That's the name of the game. They're very powerful. So what causes hormonal dysfunction? I guess that's the big key, unless I missed a slide. No, we're here. Can't even remember where my slides are. So what causes hormonal dysfunction? Well, any dysfunction with one or more of the 3 hormone steps, or the 3 steps of hormone metabolism. So there's 3 steps to hormones. We're going to keep it simple. The 3 steps are, the first one, you have to make the hormone. So the gland makes the hormone, like we use the example of thyroid. And some glands make multiple hormones, like the ovaries make more than just estrogen. They also make progesterone and many others. So you have to, step 1, you make the hormone. Step 2, you have to use the hormone. That hormone has to get to the tissue, activate the tissue to create the desired outcome, whatever that is. And then the third step is we have to lose the hormone. So the way I like to explain it, we have to make it, we have to use it, and we have to lose it. Okay? Each one of these can be affected, creating hormonal dysfunction. And I'm going to get into that. So problems with what are some problems with making the hormone? Seems fairly straightforward, as long as the gland can make it. Actually, if you follow conventional medicine and our conventional models of dealing with hormone, the medical model, they always create the assumption that there's a problem with making the hormone, so they add more hormone in, right? Bioidentical hormone clinics and all of them, it's never about removing hormone or balancing hormone. It's about adding hormone. We live in a society where we always think more is better. More medication, more this, more that, more hormone. It's actually the opposite, but I'll get into that. So first problem, this can happen. It's just not very common. Problems with making hormone. Well, some things that happen, causes of it, if there's a gland disorder or a weakness in the gland. Most common scenarios that I see, and I'm giving trends, and I don't know everybody individually and what they're dealing with. This is hormonal strategies and therapies and functional medicine and integrative medicine. It has to be specific for you. I'm giving trends here in our talk today. But the most common ones that I see is from a problem where the gland, where there's a problem with making hormone that's causing the dysfunction, is adrenal gland dysfunction, where the adrenal glands get fatigued, they can't make enough hormone. Another common causes of adrenal gland fatigue is chronic fatigue, chronic exhaustion, where you burn out your adrenal glands, or autoimmune disease. Those are the 2 areas that we'll see. But it's very uncommon where the gland can't make enough hormone, unless you've had a bunch of hormone in your body and your thyroid or your ovaries or your testes start to shrink. And again, thyroid gland destruction, that could be, shrinking due to medications and or autoimmune disease. Autoimmunity is a disorder, family of many disorders where your immune system attack yourself. And you got to control it. You can control autoimmunity. We work with that every day in our office. It's not easy, but it can be done. If it's autoimmune disease, what is the solution? You need major lifestyle interventions and sometimes medical interventions. This is really where, again, functional integrative medicine, looking for the why of the problem. What's aggravating your immune system and making it damage your tissues at a fast rate? That is where to look. But that's one scenario. So problems making hormones. And then also, if it's chronic fatigue, if the gland is exhausted, like in adrenal fatigue, moderate and disciplined modifications are required. Very disciplined. I'll see people with chronic fatigue and exhaustion for 30 years. They just think that's normal for them now. But they have enough hope that they're willing to try anything. And it can take, many months, if not over a year, to get them out of it. But if someone's dealing with something for 30 years, we have to expect some time, but it takes discipline. That's why I put it chronic fatigue. It takes a lot of discipline, consistency to get out of it. So that's one scenario, problems with making hormones. And these are some areas of problems or trends that I see where we see that. The next week or place where there can be problems is the second step, where we have people have problems using the hormone. This is a little bit different. The most common cause with having problems with using the hormone is if the body is bombarded with so much hormone, whatever hormone that is. That could be insulin, right? Diabetics, where they have to take insulin. And what happens over years, they've got to take more and more and more insulin to have the same effect. They call it insulin resistance. But you can have resistance, a hormone resistance to many other hormones. You can have it to cortisol, you can have it to thyroid, you can have it to estrogen, and your body doesn't make too much estrogen, doesn't make too much progesterone, it doesn't make too much of any of these hormones usually, unless it's tampered with and you add more in. So hormone resistance usually isn't too common in sex hormones and most metabolic hormones. Insulin, it is. Insulin resistance from dietary habits. But hormone resistance is the biggest cause with not being able to use hormones. Excess bioidentical hormone use. You know, if you have so much hormone in your body. So a brief back to that little taxi system and the receptor. So you make the hormone. I'll start on, you make the hormone. The hormone jumps on the taxi, travels to the receptor, and pushes the button on the tissue that we want to activate and have the desired outcome. That button, that receptor on the button is very sensitive. So with diabetics, they take a lot of insulin. There's capsule, mostly injections, and they push that button every time they have insulin. If there's too much insulin coming at that button, because they need so much insulin to get their sugar down, that button becomes worn. It becomes calloused. You need more insulin to be able to activate that button. That button becomes broken. Now that's a common theme where people are aware of diabetics, type 1 diabetics need more and more insulin. It works the same with other hormone medications like thyroid. You'll see a lot of people have to go higher and higher on their thyroid medication. You'll see with bioidentical hormones all the time. People never go on the same dose. They actually have to keep going up and up and up to have the same effect because that button wears out. So we become resistant in hormones. We gotta be careful with this. Excess medications, I talked about that, can cause hormone resistance. Overactive glands. So kind of like before, if you have too much activity of a gland, you make too much hormone and you can become resistant to that hormone. You can be numb to it. I'll see this with bodybuilders and testosterone, back to bioidentical hormone. Their testosterone numbers will be sky high, but testosterone opposes estrogen, and they won't see any of the effect of their testosterone flowing through their body because it's not getting into their cells. It's not activating the receptor. So the little bit of estrogen these bodybuilders have, it starts to show up. It has an effect, and you will see great big male bodybuilders with crying in my office. I only had a few, so I don't want to exaggerate. So I see them all the time. It's not a big part of our clientele by no means, but I've seen them cry. I've seen them, their voice would get softer, highly emotional, not because they're jacking even more testosterone in their body because they're competitive bodybuilders. Not too common I see this, but that's a good example of hormone resistance. So what is the goal? They got to get that testosterone out of the body, so hopefully that button receptor can start healing so they can get the effect of the testosterone in the future. So I always tell those individuals it gets worse before it gets better. The same thing happens with contraceptive use, though. Same thing. They can go on a lot of contraceptive, but then their natural estrogen receptors don't work. The infertility can happen, all of these different things, hair loss, weight gain, all of these things. So sometimes glands can be overactive, and you get excess hormone production, and you'll see disorders like this PCOS, also known as polycystic ovarian syndrome. Other autoimmune diseases like Graves' disease. Graves is where the thyroid gets overstimulated and it produces too much hormone. Solutions for hormone resistance is, well, you got to find out which hormone is the problem. So advanced testing is very important, and then you got to determine the cause of it. And if it's autoimmune, well, major lifestyle interventions, sometimes medical interventions, kind of like before. Autoimmunity can be managed. A lot of abnormal hormonal dysfunctions and hormonal imbalances are due to autoimmune disorders. A lot of people don't even know they have the disorder. So not all of them, but many of them. So the third one, we save the best for last out of these 3 steps. Problems with losing and clearing hormone. So just to recap, we got to make it, we got to use it, and we got to lose it. This is the third step of hormone metabolism and function. When you have problems with losing and clearing the hormone, this is where the majority of the problems lie. You can't get it out of the body. If you can't get the hormone out of the body, that hormone circulating, steady pushing that button, and you become hormone resistant. That's just one factor. Hormones start to build in the body, cause other problems. That's where the dysfunction lies. That's where the dysfunction lies. So when you have this hormone buildup, this will result in hormone resistance. We talked about that, just too much accumulating in the body. The solutions to get past this is one of the major ones is enhancing liver function, because the only way you can get these excess hormones out of the body is the liver. I say this every day, and it's always true, and it's because it doesn't change. The solution to getting the hormone out of the body is increasing liver function. And you have to optimize digestion as well, because the liver has a lot of jobs. And if anybody has digestive disorders, any kind of digestive disorder, pain in the gut, diarrhea, constipation, any of that, acid reflux, those are digestive disorders. And then you don't get the contents out of the body. And those contents leak into the bloodstream. And then the liver has to clean it all up. So many causes of liver dysfunction, but the majority of hormonal disorders and imbalances is the liver is unable to get these toxins out of the body. And of course, detoxification isn't only about liver, it's about the skin. You got to have enough energy for the liver to work. There's a lot of pieces. The digestion has to be corrected before you should even go into liver work and detoxification. And I mentioned energy. For the liver to work, it needs ample energy. So if you have energy problems, you got to optimize that. So hormones are very far downstream to the original problem. Someone has weakness, fatigue, weight gain, skin disorders, infertility, hair loss, energy problems, of course, low libido, and they're worried about hormones. I would say, yeah, for sure. But we got to find out the why of the hormone problem. So please remember this. This is very important. If you don't, and you just go take bioidentical hormone, hopefully it helps. Chances are it's not going to help everything. And there's something known, and I'm really beating up bioidentical hormone. I have colleagues that do it, and they're very good at it. So don't rule it out, but look at other things, because there's consequences to these hormones. But there's something called the honeymoon hormone. And if any of you listening or watching this have taken bioidentical hormones, you probably know what I mean. The first time you go on bioidentical hormones, men and women, they will feel euphoric, most people. And it's like the most exciting thing ever. They feel 30 years younger, everything feels better, energy, everything. And then it ends. Then you got to go back for your refill or whatever, or more injections or pellets or whatever you're using. And you feel pretty good again, but not like you were the first time. This is because you're already becoming resistant to the hormone that's being put in your body. You can never achieve that. So it's called the honeymoon hormone, and it is real. It is real. Many of you listening to this that have been through that, probably laughing because you've experienced it. So as I mentioned, clearing excess hormone out of the body is the most common cause of hormone dysfunction. So where does all this hormone come from? That should be the argument, if you're not on bioidentical hormones or anything else. And what hormone is it? Usually it's estrogen. Usually. Because estrogen is, I should say, estrogen-like chemicals. Estrogen-like chemicals act like estrogen. They do all the bad parts of bad things of estrogen, but none of the good ones. The bad parts of estrogen are weight gain, reduced libido, emotional mood swings, PMS symptoms, all of those things and many more. But they don't do the good things that estrogen is supposed to do, which is hair growth, fertility, libido function, all the other feminine characteristics. And men need a little bit of estrogen as well, but not that much. And men, when they become toxic, and these chemicals, they're called xenoestrogens. And many of you, if you're listening to this and watching this, you've probably heard of xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens are estrogen-like compounds that are chemicals in our environment, in our aerosols, in our plastics, in our perfumes, in petroleum. Many different chemicals can mimic estrogen and do all these bad things. They sit in the body, they bioaccumulate and cause a dysfunction. They inhibit your testosterone. Testosterone, men and women need it for frontal lobe capacity. That's the front part of your brain where you can make split-second decisions, for libido function, for maintaining muscle mass, to maintaining proper weight, maintaining energy. All of those things. Estrogen sabotages all of it. There's the phrase, the phrase that's We live in an estrogen dominant environment, a sea of estrogen. I think that's what they say. It's true, but it's due to environmental factors and chemicals, and your liver has to get that stuff out of the body. But again, you got to have optimized digestion. You have to have optimized energy, and then you start working on the liver. Then you can really enhance liver function. So hopefully that, that made sense, but that's the most common causes of hormonal dysfunction. So what do you do? What are some of these solutions? Well, number one, highly recommend you got to test and find out where your numbers are. If you don't know, you don't know. You got to know, is it a hormonal problem if you're dealing with these symptoms? You got to look at your environment and find out what, instead of going on a whole bunch of detox products and supplementation and all that, but there's so much of it. And I use it. I recommend it in my clinic for a short period of time. It's not indefinite, and it's not every, it's not every New Year's that it's kind of a New Year's resolution thing. But I do recommend it, but do what you can in your home. Look for chemicals, look for foods. Foods can create these xenoestrogens right in your foods. There's processed foods are terrible for this. Soy is a terrible thing. Soy is horrific. Let's just put it there. I don't, whether you're vegan or vegetarian, soy is the most mutated estrogen or hormonal disrupting foods on the planet. Well, maybe there's a worse one, but that's high up there. Look at your foods, look at your chemicals, look at your soaps and your personal care products, air fresheners, laundry detergents. All of those are very powerful endocrine disrupting chemicals, aka xenoestrogens. I wish there were chemicals that acted like testosterone and gave everybody the benefits of testosterone. And of course, there's other dysfunctions in the body that create hormonal problems, but this is the big one. And this is 90% of it. I see it in clinic every day. And if someone is holding on to more fat tissue, male or female, fat tissue acts as an estrogen sink. It's a storage place for estrogen, including these xenoestrogens. That's the biggest problem. I'm not worried about original estrogen, but it sits in fat tissue and it does two things. One major thing, it acts as a fat magnet. So a lot of people have a hard time to lose weight, and it's due to a hormonal dominance. They can't get this hormone out of the body. Their liver's problematic. Either low energy, poor digestion, those are some of the big ones. So hopefully this gives you some understanding of it. But that's how hormones work, and you can apply that concept with my little taxi and everything to any hormone you're dealing with. But be very careful with bioidentical hormones. We have a hard time to help people get off bioidentical hormones because of the dependency. So I highly recommend, if someone is dealing with and kind of on the fence about bioidentical hormones, or trying to, they never feel the same since they were on them, reach out to us, or wherever you are. I have colleagues all over the country. Really, I can refer you out to different places that'll help. People, when they watch these presentations, they're like, well, what is the one thing I can do? Well, it's not easy, but look at your environment. That's number one. Look at your foods, number two. Men and women, look at how can you detox the liver. How can you do that? You got to be careful with detox, but you can do it. So I'm going to show you something on my website that hopefully is going to be helpful for you. It should be. So this is the website, drgharrison.com, drgharrison.com. There's an amount of information in here, but what I'm going to recommend, these free resources, there's health workshops. Maybe you heard about this presentation in here. They're all free. I highly recommend, either if you're trying to identify if toxicity is an issue or hormonal dysfunction is an issue, just give us a call. But you can actually order labs right out of this store. You can order labs, and I have videos on here how to explain how to order. There's hormonal tests as well. It's a free resource. I put all this stuff up for my clients that I work with so they can access this stuff, and they don't need us. They can be independent. There's another thing I highly recommend looking at this. This is the supplement store and the education link. And this is all on our website. It's all free. So you can work on, and you can always call us, and we can always have an appointment as well, to get you on the right track. But I have a section in here, there's digestion, detoxification. I highly look at this. You can get access to all of our products. You need a special access code. We can't put it online, but just call us and you can click the link and it'll pop up and we'll send it to you immediately. The merchants don't want us putting, pharmaceutical grade supplements on the website, rightfully so. They want people to, respect them. They're very powerful. You're not going to find these in a grocery store. But I have videos on these products on how to use them. You got to be very careful with how to use detoxification supplements. I also have videos on certain hormonal supplements. The interesting thing about hormonal supplementations, the only ones that work naturally are usually the ones that clear estrogen out of the body. All of these are mostly clearing estrogen out of the body. So that's really where you want to go with this stuff. But take advantage of the free resources on this website. This is even a free 30-day course on healthy living during COVID. If people are concerned about COVID, which probably everybody should be a little bit, and free health workshops. So there's a lot of free resources on here, free videos, how to use a supplement. You can order them. You can even order your labs without a doctor. Videos on if you'd want to order a lab, if it's relevant for you or not, when you would want to order it, when you wouldn't want to order it. So it's all absolutely free. I highly recommend. I spend months and months and months putting this stuff together for past clients ultimately, but take advantage of it. There is a presentation that talks a little bit about this or what we did, and you might want to consider it. It's under free workshops here. I have a few, but there is one on hormones. There's the one on thyroid. You can click it, you can access it here and register for it. These are recorded, they're not live. I don't have time to do all of these. But stress hormones in your health, this is a pretty good one. This will get into what we talked about, probably a little bit greater depth. I can't even remember all the details of what I put in this one. I think it's taking the concepts we talked about and elaborating on them a little bit more. I also have one on toxicity. This should be more of a hormone presentation because, as you can see, the connection between toxicity and hormones, they're close. So hopefully that's helpful. You understand the mechanism of hormones a lot more, how they work. You can apply them to everything. And again, feel free to reach out if there's any questions, comments, concerns. By all means, I will do my best to answer them. Ideally, email is probably the best way to track us down, or you can also give us a call. Monday to Friday, we're in the office, and again, the website is www.drgharrison.com. That's where everything is. So with that being said, stay tuned. Every month we're going to have some kind of master class. They initially were designed for our past and current clients to give them more information. But we did open it up to the public, and we just did that in the last 2 months. So stay tuned, and we'll always have more. I'm not too sure about the topic next day. I will take suggestions though. So by all means, you can reach out. And so anyway, I hope that was helpful. Again, reach out if you have any concerns. We'll be back in the office on Monday, but you can always send an email this weekend, and we'll get it. So anyway, with that being said, I'm Dr. Glenn Harrison, and I look forward to talking to you next day. Have a great evening.